Hey there, Yumi and DC fans, and welcome if you're new. I am the Stepson of Krypton, coming to you today with Superman 32, another in the DCKO tie-ins. However, this one actually ties in more than any of the other tie-ins thus far. No, I just said tie-in a lot, so forgive me, but it is actually a really, really good tie-in. So I don't want to waste a whole lot of time with this intro, guys. Let's just go ahead and get on into it. All right, guys. So if you remember where we were kind of at the end of Superman 31, which was another KO tie-in, that Lois had gone to the fortress and she runs into Superboy Prime. She's trying to extract the information from the Kryptonian archives about Darkseid and Doomsday. And they run into Sunboy and a couple of minions of Darkseid there. But when Lois gets blasted by Sunboy, she gets her powers back and kind of takes back the mantle of being Superwoman, right? So Superman 32 starts off were before, and she's talking about her powers, and this was during the absolute run, the absolute power run. And they mentioned that, they're not sure if they can ever return, which is kind of a little foreshadowing given what we know now. We then jump back to now, and in the fortress, Lois and Superboy Prime, they're just letting Sunboy have it, right? And Lois is happy to be able to help, but she's not sure for how long, right? How long is she going to have the powers this time? But they can't leave yet. Lois needs to extract the Kryptonian archives to find out about the information about Doomsday and Darkseid, as mentioned previously. Right. And Lois mentions the tournament to Superboy Prime, who's kind of like surprised, like, what tournament are you talking about? And we see this page here, and it's kind of interesting because it says Man of Apocalypse. And of course, we see Superman. He's fighting one of the big elder god that were kind of overlooking the tournament. We see Joker, Batman getting speared, right? And we're getting some narration. It's like our villain, whoever's doing the narrating, isn't happy that the heroes try to lock him up in the Phantom Zone instead of asking them for help. Of course, it's Lex, and he's talking to Superman about how much better it would have been if they had worked together. Instead, now they have to fight against one another, and it's in a fight to the death. And to be fair, he's not wrong. But Superman is still wondering how they escaped the Phantom Zone. We then flash back a week where we see Time Trapper, World Forager, we see Booster and Grodd. They're all kind of standing above the heroes there, looking a little menacing. And are they going to be able to go through with this contest? Which is going to what is it? Is it going to take? And Superman kind of doesn't want any part of it, but Grodd seems to be up to something. It looks like Grodd and his former associates, they don't have faith in our heroes, and they have zero intention of being locked in the Phantom Zone. So we see King Shark, we see Cheetah, Giganta, we see Starro. They're back in their old home. They thought they were going to the Phantom Zone, and nope, they're in their old home of the headquarters of the Legion of Doom. And they're kind of wondering, like, why they were brought there instead of the Phantom Zone. If you remember, the T spheres were going, and they were basically just kind of beaming people into the Phantom Zone. But it would seem someone's using the hard light holograms to make the League actually believe that these people are in the Phantom Zone. And our mystery guest, he's kind of explaining to the group that they don't have much faith in the League's plan, believing that, like the Justice League, their heroes like Superman, they don't know how to be ruthless, right? So they need to come up with a plan of their own. And of course, it's Lex who's behind it all. And it kind of looks like he's been doing some P90 Lex, right? Sorry, I know that was probably a dad joke. But Cheetah does not seem to be too happy about it being Lex. And of course, we see the Jokers here too. But how are they going to get into the tournament? It's taking place at the center of the earth. And, how are they going to do that without being noticed? But then again, Lex is a pretty smart fella. But with the whole team in special suits, they're going to use the Nexus to get there. And the voiceover Lex is posing a question to Superman. We see Lex, he's heading closer and closer to the heart of Apocalypse, and they continue to kind of go back and forth about how Lex is willing to go to places that Superman isn't to win this tournament. And that Superman has yet to realize his biggest weakness. Then we kind of get a little bit of a preview of the actual fight that's going to take place between Superman and Captain Atom. And we see Luthor versus the demon Etrigan, which, depending on the release order, the KO event number 2 kind of explains the next part of the tournament before we get to these fights. So we go back to the fortress. Superboy Prime and Lois are still talking about why he wasn't told and how he is so much more powerful, like literally OP compared to the others that have gone down there. But Superboy Prime has an idea. So Sunboy and his buddies try to convince Lois to join them and help them kill Superboy Prime, to which she politely declines, of course, and they intend to just leave her there to die with the rest of the world. But Darkseid's minions have no intentions of letting them get to the archives, as what is stored within the archives threatens the final god. You know, and Lois, knowing that her powers could fail at any minute, chooses to fight. We then see actual Superman fly in and take out Sunboy and his friends. And Lois says, Clark? Kind of shocked. But at second glance, it doesn't look like our Superman. There's obviously some changes to the suit. Even though he's saying, here's Superman coming to save the day, it doesn't look like our Superman, the one that went down into the KO tournament. However, he is here to help, and now the battle is even. So the fight continues on, and Prime is kind of still being his overly cocky self. And Lois admits she doesn't miss having her powers, but she does miss fighting alongside Superman. So the Evil Legion are down, though we don't know for how long. And now they need to get the archives out of the fortress. But Lois is like, she poses the question, like, if you're here, Superman, what happened in the tournament? But when she asks, she's kind of surprised by what she sees. It's robot Superman. And they're going to use him to get the information to the real Superman. But first, they need to get the archives extracted, and they need to get Superman robot to Time Trapper. And we see Booster, we get the one cut of we see Booster's got Time Trapper by the neck. Right? So, as if you remember, he's supposedly Darkseid. But the next issue, which won't be in this release order, but the next issue after this group, because remember, there's 4 releasing this week, is Superman versus Captain Atom. And that is where this issue ends. Guys, I said probably one of the better tie-ins, because we got a little backstory as to how the villains actually managed to make it into the tournament. Because when you just read the KO event, you're like, this doesn't make sense. And what happened? This kind of gives some filler, as well as we kind of getting some, they have some plan to try to help Superman in the KO tournament here. So I definitely did think it was one of the best of the tie-ins. Let me know down in the comments, how did you feel about it? Are you liking the KO event? Is this something that's we're going to continue it, even though some of the issues aren't seemingly doing so well? Part of that is because YouTube is being ginormous dicks right now in recommending our channel. So if you have made it with me this far, it would definitely help if you go ahead and give the video a like, subscribe into the channel, and having the bell notifications clicked, so you will get alerted when we release all of the different KO events, as well as the Justice League Unlimited and the Absolute series. And then we have our whole slew of videos coming out about what's going on with the James Gunn DCU. So keep this video as short as is humanly possible, guys. That is going to do it for me on this episode of You, Me, and DC. Until next time, guys, I'll see you then.